welcome to Some Good Tea Story Time, where we drink some tea and share a story. I'm your host, Katie, and tonight I'm sharing the story of Happy Dog, a historic local ghost story from South Carolina. While I tell this story, I'm enjoying The Raven, a tea by Wynwood Farms. Pour yourself a cup, pull up a chair, and settle in. The Unhappy Dog. The legend goes that once, in the 1800s, a man and his big white dog were traveling in South Carolina through the summered forest along Old Buncombe Road. While they were staying in town, and the peddler was selling his wares and minding his business, he and his dog seemed nice. He was friendly and warm, always had a smile and a kind word, and kept to himself when not out selling for the day. When it came time for him to move on, however, the townsfolk discovered a dark secret. Was it a petty theft, vandalism, cheating, or perhaps a twisted murder? Some of the details are lost to time, but we do know, and the townsfolk knew. They knew none of their own could have done something so terrible. They rallied a mob and chased down the peddler and his old dog on Old Buncombe Road. He hadn't gotten far. They held his trial and found him guilty of the murder. They locked him up, leaving his dog to whimper at the jailhouse door all night. The next day, they hung the peddler right there by the road to warn any others like this monster from desecrating their peaceful little town. That big white dog was none too pleased at the townsfolk, however. He sat all day and night below his beloved master and howled. No one could rest. He kept the children up and frightened travelers on the road. Day after day, night after night, the big white dog howled and howled as his master rotted above him in the hanging tree. The cries of the dog pained the townsfolk so much that the real killer confessed after a few weeks. Haunted by guilt, the sheriff sent men to cut down the poor peddler and give him a decent burial. But the big white dog was still there at the hanging tree, starved, mad, and ready to fight. The deputies were forced to shoot the slobbering, mad dog to put it out of its misery. Finally, the town thought they would have some peace. Months passed, and the howls started up again late at night. One evening, the hangman came into town, shaken, telling a tale of a large, grinning white dog that had chased him on Old Buncombe Road. Though he had whipped his horse to a gallop, the dog had kept up with him. Folks had been hearing the howling, and some could smell the rot of a body that wasn't there, out by the hanging tree, especially late at night. Even Doc Cofield claimed to have been chased by a grinning dog when he was coming back from seeing one of his patients late one night. The townsfolk had a decision to make. They could not have that dog out there scaring away travelers. They didn't know how the beast could still be haunting them, but something had to be done. So they formed a posse, and out they went to hunt it down. But though they searched the road up and down all day, and scoured the wood all that afternoon, no sign of the beast was to be seen, not a tuft of hair or a single paw print. As the sun was setting, the sheriff rounded everyone back up and called it a day. They could put out bait for the beast and lay traps tomorrow. He gave one last look over the dusky roadway and could see in the shadows, standing by the hanging tree, a large white dog, its jaws hanging open in an evil grin, its eyes blazing red. The sheriff fumbled for his gun and called for his deputy, but when he looked up again, the dog was gone. Nowadays, if you ask locals who live near the Newberry and Union counties in South Carolina, you will find some who have made that long, dark drive along Old Buncombe Road, some who have been out just a little too late, and some who are terrified because they have seen a large white dog with a slobbering grin and blazing, vengeful eyes. Our second story for this evening comes from folklore from South Central Connecticut. So pour yourself another cup of tea, hold it close, keep those lights on, and let's delve into the story, shall we? Third time's the charm. The Hanging Hills are located in South Central Connecticut and overlook several nearby towns. The Hubbard Park encompasses the hills and includes many gardens, the Metcomb Trail, Mirror Lake, and is the home of a lonely, spectral black dog, the Black Dog. Sightings of the specter go back as far as the 18th century, and while there is no clear origin of the hauntings itself, one thing is clear: the dog is there. Its presence became widely known by 1891 when a geologist, known now only by his initials FS, when he was surveying the 200 million year old rock formations in the area and encountered the specter. He reported to the Connecticut Quarterly newspaper that he was followed by a silent black dog during his survey. It never left his side during his whole trip, but when he prepared to leave, it vanished. Adding to the mystery, the creature never left any paw prints and made no sound of any kind. With such a singular encounter haunting his survey, FS packed up, made his report, and did not return to the area again for 3 years. When he did, he was accompanied by a friend, one Herbert Marshall, a United States Geological Survey member. They were once again setting out to study the rock formations of the hills. During their long days hiking and traversing, the two men shared stories and eventually started talking about the black dog. Apparently, Herbert had encountered the creature as well several years back when he had first been to the Hanging Hills, coming across the dog twice in his time in the park. The next day, out collecting data on an escarpment, the two men had a run-in with the black dog as they stood on a cliff edge studying the hill's strange rock formations. The dog did not approach or make a sound, only seemed to watch and study them with sad eyes. Herbert commented on how odd it was the dog looked so sad, and that this was the third time he had seen it, never having noted the creature's forlorn expression before. The men thought little of it until only a few hours later, when Herbert was killed while hiking back down the cliff in a landslide. FS, understandably grief-stricken at the loss of his friend and frightened, ended his survey early and left the Hanging Hills as soon as he could. He did not see the dog again. Another 3 years went by, and once again, FS returned to the area and the same location where tragedy had struck and Herbert had died. No one knows what truly befell that fateful day, for it was some time that passed before F.S.'s body was discovered, dead, at the same location where Herbert had died 3 years before. Was it the black dog of the Hanging Hills? Was it foul play or mere chance? We may never know. What we can say is that each man saw the dog 3 times. Each man lost their life in those hills. Other reports have been scattered throughout the park's history. The dog is small to medium height, seems friendly to passive in nature, and has a distinctively sad expression. Everyone who sees it notes that it leaves no tracks and makes no noise, whether of walking, barking, or howling at all, though it may appear to do all of these behaviors. All who believe in the black dog also caution, if you have seen the black dog twice already, do not come back for the 3rd time. It will be your last. Thank you for listening to Some Good Tea Storytime. Our story this evening was brought to you by various sources on the internet. They are listed in the description. The music for this episode was composed using resources from Monument Studios. A link to their website and their music is provided in the description. The tea for this evening is also linked in the description. As always, they are not a sponsor, we are just a fan. Thanks for listening, and we will talk at you later.